You still be my brother, no matter the weather. No, you and I, we know say khaki no be leather. That one no mean say we no fit love each other. Stick together like bread and butter. Forget about the past, now the future really matter. Oh yes, my brother, no one else, no other. We tell you the truth.
Maybe they'll make you a metaphysical Allen Ryan.
Wait. I can get $200.
My brother, and
Which
wish make you
is?
prosper, live long like Red Rasta, become a superstar. But let's
I wouldn't say no to a $200.
Thanos is coming. He's coming.
Who?
By the end of this video, you will know who is the real Tano they are so concerned about his coming. This powerful and somewhat dark complexion warlord type of being in the Avengers movies who is hell-bent on bringing stability to the universe by wiping out half of civilization. I pray you're patient during this teaching as I will share with you ancient stories, AKAN forefathers and mothers on the west coast of the African continent and those carried away captives in the diaspora, in particular those of the Ashanti Kingdom, used to tell each other. The depth of these stories would be unfamiliar territories for most, whereas it would bring a form of clarity to some with a solid ground in scriptures. With this, let's dive right onto the subject and introduce Tano and Bia. As the saying goes, eat the meat and spit out the bones. Most West African peoples are greatly influenced by the oceans along their coasts and rivers that flow from the interior. The most powerful divinities are those spirits of the rivers and seas. Even as women bear children, so the rivers and the lakes are said to bring forth many divinities. Worship of the river god Tano is prominent in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, especially among the AKAN peoples. The second son of Nyame, or Onyame, is said to be Tano, the arch-rival of his brother Bia. Though Bia, the firstborn, was Nyame's favorite son, Tano cheated his brother of his inheritance. Tano is the father of other gods. Remember that. Tano is the father of other gods. He is not only the divinity of the river, but also the god of thunder, who is propitiated during a thunderstorm. Bia was the favorite of Onyame, who wanted to reward his dutiful son by giving him the fertile and well-wooded lands when he reached manhood. The dry and infertile lands would go to his disobedient son, Tano. God disclosed his intentions to his messenger, the goats, and asked him to summon the boys to come and receive their lots. It turned out, however, that Tano was the goat's favorite. The goat disclosed the secret to Tano and told him to go to his father's house early in the morning, disguised as Bia, his brother, to receive his lot. Afterward, the goat went to deliver the message to Bia, but added that there was no need to hurry because God was busy. Bia therefore took his time, feeling sure that he would get his just share. Early the next morning, Tano dressed up and went to God disguised as his brother and was given the rich, fertile lands. Later on, Bia went to his father and the mistake was discovered, but nothing could be done about it. Bia was therefore given the dry and infertile lands as his inheritance. To this day, the goat is taboo to all worshippers of Bia and Tano. The story of Tano and Bia is very similar to the Bible story of Jacob and Esau, which we can read in the book of Genesis. From these two accounts, we can clearly see that Tano in the traditional story of the AKAN is in fact Jacob, and Bia is Esau. The AKAN people, among whom are found the Ashanti people, are a very spiritual people who believe that everything first starts in the spiritual realm before manifesting itself in the physical realm. As such, the AKAN version of the story centers on the spiritual origin of the conflict between Jacob and Esau, and provide several interesting elements which might go right over your head if not understanding the story is told in parables and in an encoded way that can be unlocked through scriptures. What may sound like a pagan story to some at first glance is in fact a very cleverly preserved piece of biblical history from a people that have been described as fugitives from Northeast Africa through Egypt, Ethiopia, Sudan, Timbuktu, Mali regions to present-day Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. After an exodus of over 2,000 years, the depth of the AKAN story of Tano and Bia contain hidden elements that I can only assume would have been designed to cause an overall remembrance of self. Let's look at Esau, for example, who is pleading and petitioning his father for his blessing, with tears but to no avail. The book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 16 to 17 reads, "Lest there be any fornicator or profane person like Esau, who for one morsel of food sold his birthright. For you know that afterward, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected. For he found no place for repentance, though he sought it diligently with tears." We can easily see here that the rejection of Esau starts from the spiritual realm, since Yahweh, or Yahweh if you prefer, who is dealing with them is spirit. The AKAN story is therefore one of pre-origin, that is to say, before the physical birth of the twins, before they could do any good or bad. Romans chapter 9, verse 10 to 13. "But Rebekah's children were conceived at the same time by our father Isaac, yet before the twins were born or had done anything good or bad, in order that God's purpose in election might stand, not by works, but by him who calls. She was told, the older will serve the younger. Just as it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated." What did Yahweh say to Jeremiah? Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 4 to 5. "The word of the Lord came to me saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." In the story of Jacob and Esau, we read that after pleading with tears diligently and making a petition to his father for a blessing, Isaac finally declares to Esau that he would be getting his way through the power of the sword, in other words, by the use of force or violence. All of these characteristics of Esau are cleverly summarized in the AKAN story of Tano and Bia by simply renaming Esau Bia instead. What does the name Bia mean? Let's look into the so-called Hebrew Bible. Strong's H1156 defines Bia as to ask, seek, to make a request, to make a petition. Then, in a twist of simple linguistic brilliance, Bia can also be found in the Greek Bible with the meaning strength, force, violence. One name encompasses all the characteristics of Esau or Edom in both the Hebrew language of the Old Testament and the Greek translation of the New Testament. This helps us set a timeline for the origin of the story of Tano and Bia among the AKAN people, but that's a story for another day. There is more hidden gems to the story of Tano and Bia to uncover. Tano is also known as Ta-Kora, with Ta being an abbreviation of Tano and Korah meaning the keeper or the mender, that is to say the one who mends that which is broken. Now that's interesting because, would you believe it, Korah is the name of an Israelite in the Bible.
Every night and then they pray for my downfall. I say, waiting on the find, waiting to find my brother. I'm a ruler, yeah, are you a ruler, yeah? I'm a ruler, yeah, are you a ruler, yeah? I'm just a bad boy from a very good home. Hey, my family and friends them bone. See, I left them to stay on my own, but now right now they make them home.
Numbers chapter 16 verse 1. Now Korah, the son of Esau, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi. So more specifically, Korah is of the priestly order. Korah, son of Esau, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, and certain Reubenites, Dathan and Abiram, son of Eliab, and On, son of Peleth, became insolent and rose up against Moses. With them were 250 Israelite men, well-known community leaders who had been appointed members of the council. They came as a group to oppose Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You've gone too far. The whole community is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is with them. Why then do you set yourself above the Lord's assembly?" When Moses heard this, he fell face down. Then he said to Korah and all his followers, "In the morning, the Lord will show who belongs to him and who is holy, and he will have that person come near him. The man he chooses, he will cause to come near him. You, Korah, and all your followers are to do this. Take censers, and tomorrow put burning coals and incense in them before the Lord. The man the Lord chooses will be the one who is holy. You Levites have gone too far." Moses also said to Korah, "Now listen, you Levites. Isn't it enough for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the rest of the Israelite community and brought you near himself to do the work at the Lord's tabernacle and to stand before the community and minister to them? He has brought you and all your fellow Levites near himself. But now you're trying to get the priesthood too? It is against the Lord that you and all your followers have banded together. Who is Aaron that you should grumble against him?" As you can read in Numbers chapter 3 verse 27 to 32, Korah was of the family responsible for taking care of sacred items in the holy sanctuary, including the Ark of the Covenant. Then Moses summoned Dathan and Abiram, son of Eliab, but they said, "We will not come. Isn't it enough that you have brought us out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness? And now you also want to be Lord over us? Moreover, you haven't brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, or given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Do you want to treat these men like slaves? No, we ain't coming." To understand the extent of the disrespect that goes with Dathan and Abiram's refusal to come when Moses summoned them, you must get into the cultural context of this interaction. In the tradition of the Asante kingdom, for example, the biggest part of an oath of allegiance sworn by original king to the paramount king of Asante consists in declaring that they would make themselves available at any time of the day should the king call them, or agree to face severe consequences if failing to do so. Here is an example of a new regional king swearing an oath of allegiance to the paramount king of Asante. He starts by declaring his pedigree, his lineage, then concludes his pledge by swearing an oath to always show up when called by the king.
So manager, in bed the swim, never. So we shine a year there. So friendly, I'm telling you, I'm our. It won't thank us yet.
Let's get back to the story of Korah in Numbers chapter 16, after Dathan and Abiram's refusal to come when Moses summoned them. Verse 15. Then Moses became very angry and said to the Lord, "Don't accept their offering. I've not taken so much as a donkey from them, nor have I wronged any of them." Moses said to Korah, "You and all your followers are to appear before the Lord tomorrow, you and they and Aaron. Each man is to take his censer and put incense in it, 250 censers in all, and present it before the Lord. You and Aaron are to present your censers also." So each of them took his censer, put burning coals and incense in it, and stood with Moses and Aaron at the entrance of the tent of meeting. When Korah had gathered all his followers in opposition to them at the entrance to the tent of meeting, the glory of the Lord appeared to the entire assembly. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Separate yourselves from this assembly so I can put an end to them at once." But Moses and Aaron fell face down and cried out, "Oh God, the God who gives breath to all living things, will you be angry with the entire assembly when only one man sins?" Then the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the assembly, move away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." Moses got up and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. He warned the assembly, "Guys, move back from the tents of these wicked men. Do not touch anything belonging to them, or you will be swept away because of all their sins." So they moved away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Dathan and Abiram had come out and were standing with their wives, children, and little ones at the entrances of their tents. Then Moses said, "This is how you will know that the Lord has sent me to do all these things and that it was not my idea. If these men die a natural death and suffer the fate of all mankind, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord brings about something totally new, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them with everything that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the realm of the dead, then you will know that these men have treated the Lord with contempt." As soon as he finished saying all this, the ground under them split apart, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them and their household and all those associated with Korah together with their possession. They went down alive into the realm of the dead with everything they owned. The earth closed over them, and they perished and were gone from the community. At their cries, all the Israelites around them fled, shouting, "Oh my days, the earth is going to swallow us too." And fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense. You might have missed something very subtle in the text. While the families of Dathan and Abiram were consumed, there is no mention of the children of Korah perishing with him. This is because greatness was to come out of Korah's generation. Numbers chapter 26, verse 10 to 11, that's in reference to Dathan and Abiram. "And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up together with Korah, when that company died, when the fire devoured 250 men, and they became a sign." Ooh! Oral history is meant to bring remembrance of significant events that have had an impact on the people telling these stories. Though they are told in parables, and generations might have forgotten the true meanings, the name Korah, for example, was not chosen by coincidence. It is to be a sign for many generations. Though blindness in part has happened to Israel, it was given to a remnant to carry signs for a time when the seals of the book are opening, even to the time of the end, and knowledge shall be increased. Though many of us have missed our appointments like Korah did, and are expecting the earth to open up and swallow us, the Bible says in verse 11, nevertheless, the children of Korah did not die. The sons of Korah are credited with writing 11 different psalms from chapter 42 to 88. They include verses of spiritual vision of the Messiah and verses of call for humility. Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. Psalm 84 of the sons of Korah. There is a river whose streams shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her just at the break of dawn. The nations raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Psalms 46 verses 4 to 7 of the sons of Korah. According to J.B. Donkwa in his book The AKAN Doctrine of Gods, Ta is a short form of Tano, and Tano is the name of a river. Korah means the keeper or adjuster in AKAN languages. As we read in the biblical texts, Korah was indeed the keeper of sacred items in the holy tabernacle. However, would a river need a keeper? Can one mend or adjust the nature of a river? Who can issue such commands to flowing waters and it would obey? If Jacob was to be like a flowing river, who could possibly change its course? Let me give you a second version of the story of Tano and Bia, still from the AKAN people.
Why are you running?
The god Kobina Ayesu arrived on earth pursued by his younger brother, Densu, because Ayesu quickly and secretly prepared a meal and tricked their blind father into eating it, pretending to be the hairy Densu, who was supposed to prepare the meal in return for their father's gold. This was in preparation for their journey to the corporeal, and the gift each deity was to receive from their father before entering the mundane to start their independent existence. Afterwards, their father, perhaps skeptical and knowing all along that it was Ayesu, nonetheless offered Ayesu the gold that was to have been given to Densu, because Ayesu passed the test set by their father. Outwitted and incandescent with rage, Densu set out in pursuit of Kobina Ayesu, to claim what he thought should have been his. However, Ayesu ran quickly into the ocean and gave the gold to the sea goddess, Abena, for safekeeping and ending any chance of Densu ever getting the gold.
Why are you running?
to why the deity Ayesu did what he did, his answer in 3 was that he, Ayesu, is the oldest, meaning Penin. Besides, he was there when their father instructed Densu to prepare the meal, and so he took the opportunity to do whatever he could to obtain the gold. Moreover, he continued, he has given Densu his share of the gold. This act created an enmity between the two brothers, although Densu maintains that what humans consider as enmity among gods equals the highest expression of love any living thing, including humans, can ever hope to achieve.
You still be my brother, no matter the weather. No, you and I, we know say khaki no be leather. That one no mean say we no fit love each other. Stick together like bread and butter. Forget about the past, now the future really matter. Oh yes, my brother, no one else, no other will tell you the truth. This is straight from the roots. Change your ways, I know they beef you, my brother. And they wish make you prosper, live long like Red Rasta, become a superstar. But yet, if you no send me, oh, people plenty when send me, oh, I'm not alone, nothing's alone. My brother say joy is here with me, and by me, oh, any more shetty, oh, down, there's nothing wrong, I just speak my mind, my brother.
Psalm 82 verse 6 to 7. I have said, you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High, but you shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Although there may be many sons, there is one firstborn, and this is what is reflected in the Ayesu version of the story of Jacob and Esau. In this version, Ayesu is the God who holds the blessing of the father and is the firstborn and boldly declares it. Jacob in the Bible is renamed Israel and is second-born twin of Esau. But in the spirit word, it is not so. Exodus chapter 4, verse 22. Then say to Pharaoh, this is what the Lord says, Israel is my firstborn son. It is very important to understand that the Bible is first and foremost a book out of Africa. Therefore, the cultural context is very important. West African religion, the study of the beliefs and practices of Akan, Ewe, Yoruba, Igbo, and kindred peoples. Sometimes twins are thought to be the children of fairies or of spirit paramours, and so all the more dangerous. The author does well to say sometimes, because more often than not, having twins in this culture, in the Akan culture anyway, is more on occasion for celebration and joy to the parents. Many twins are born, and this is more noticeable in African society, where families are large, than in Europe, where families are restricted to 1 or 2 children nowadays, and twins are seen less often. It is interesting that the firstborn twin is often called the younger, as in the myth of the god Tano, and messenger of the second, as in the Jacob and Esau story. The logical belief here is the second-born must be the eldest spiritually, as he or she was mature enough to help their younger sibling come out first. However, I must emphasize here that this is not a common belief among all Akan people. If Israel, the people, is the firstborn, it is because Yesu, to whom the nation belongs, is firstborn and has preeminence in the spiritual sense. Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 to 16. In reference to Yesu, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. Ayensu is written Ayesu interchangeably in the Akan Tree language. The name Ayensu is also interpreted in the Akan Tree language as Yen, which means our, and Su, which means nature or form, so as to say in our nature, so a God in our nature or in our form. Through these oral traditions passed from generations to generations, the name Ayesu was already familiar to the AKAN people way before the missionaries arrived. And on a side note, if you put the A at the end of the name, you get Yeshua. What about the meaning of the name Densu, you might ask, which is the name of Esau in this version of the AKAN story? Well, we know that Esau had at least 2 Hittite wives. Hittites are children of Canaan, one of the sons of Ham. The Hebrew language and that of Canaan is closely related and are oftentimes interchangeable. From a study at the Haramaya University in Ethiopia, published in the International Journal of Sciences Basic and Applied Research, we read that the Hittite word Densu or Dasu means massive, and its equivalent in Oromo, Danu, means multitude. Dansa, massive, huge. Datsa, massive, from the word Da, which means to be two, twins, double, to beget, branch. It is therefore easy to imagine that Esau would have been nicknamed Densu, meaning the double or the twin, in this case by his Hittite wives. Let's continue reading the story of Kobina Ayesu and his brother Densu. We left off when Ayesu took the blessing of their father in the form of gold and dashed into the ocean with Densu in hot pursuit to claim what he thought should be his. Ayesu gave the gold to the sea goddess Abena for safekeeping. If you have some reservations about the gold being kept in the ocean, don't worry, the Apostle Peter probably did also, with the very particular order he received from Yesu following an interaction with collectors requesting they both pay temple tax. Yesu then gives the following puzzling instruction to Peter, which we can read in Matthew chapter 17 verse 27. Nevertheless, lest we offend them, go to the sea, cast in a hook, and take the fish that comes up first. And when you have opened its mouth, you would find a piece of money. Take that and give it to them for me and you. In a very unusual manner, Yesu doesn't perform this miracle out of the receiver's faith. He simply knows the fund is at sea and places an order for collection. He has dominion over it. Continue with the story of Jacobina Ayesu and his brother Densu, now at sea. According to tradition, the sea or ocean goddess came into existence on a Tuesday as a female, and hence her first name Abena. For the AKAN, every girl born on a Tuesday goes by the same name as the sea deity, Abena. Pose. Why is the sea being given the name of a Tuesday-born female, Abena? In AKAN tradition, every male and female is given a soul name or kradin at birth, which corresponds to the day of the week when he or she is born. The child then receives his or her parents' given name on the 8th day, which is also the day of circumcision of a male child. Luke chapter 2 verse 21. On the 8th day, when it was time to circumcise the child, he was named Jesus, the name the angel had given him before he was conceived. In a very puzzling mystery for Western observers, each of the AKAN soul names or kradin is a perfect representation of each act of creation according to its day in the book of Genesis. The sea is named Abena because according to AKAN tradition, she was brought into existence on a Tuesday, which is the third day of the AKAN calendar week, which begins on Sunday. Genesis chapter 1, verse 9 to 10 and 13. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let the dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. According to the book of Genesis, the seas were created on the third day, which corresponds to the AKAN name Abena, which is given to a female born on a Tuesday or on the third day of the week. The name Mansa given to Abena in this account indicates that she is the third born, because the name Mansa signifies the third born. Let's continue with the reading. The majestic beauty, mystery, fecundity, fury, and power of Abena Mansa are attributed to the fact that she embodies the essences of all the gods on land and sea. Let's pause again. The fury of the sea will play a role at end times, and you need to be aware of it when you see the signs. Yesu prophesied in Luke chapter 21 and verse 25, "There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. People will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near." Remember Korah. His sons wrote a comforting message to you and I for these dreadful days almost 1,000 years prior. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling.
Be still, and know that I am God.
I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Psalms 46 of the sons of Korah. That is why the AKAN say Abena is a fearsome entity. The mountains that are a symbol of unmovable stability and high powers in our realm shake when they hear the roar and rage of the third born of creation. She had already set a chilling precedent in the days of Noah, when she was used to wipe all creations Yahweh had made. The book of Revelation chapter 17 verse 15 explains she also represents peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. One might say each with their own God, their religious beliefs and convictions. The book of Revelation chapter 20 verse 13 says she only gave up the dead in her after the 1,000 years of the reign of Christ, after the devil and his cohorts are cast to the lake of fire at the final judgment. Most of the deities express themselves visibly as rivers or bodies of waters that flow into and fuse with the sea. And in the process, each deity takes along what makes it a unique deity into the sea. Thus, the sea is essentially most of the deities combined, meaning Abena Mensa reigns supreme above each individual deity as mother of the gods. the Moraine Kingdom. You would hear a lot about the Moraine Kingdom in these days, and it is not by coincidence. It is designed to open our understanding to that which was unknown to most of us, but which would play a vital role in the last days. The red dragon of Revelation is fully aware of entities living in the waters, and look where he goes to wait for the first beast, to whom he gave authority and military might, the power of the sword, which is the blessing of Esau, to cause all nations to worship him. Revelation chapter 13 verse 1. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. You may now understand why the ancient AKAN people said the sea hosts many so-called deity, and behold, these things have already happened, and we are leaving them. Two Kings chapter 5. Naaman, a general for the king of Aram, was a great man and highly regarded by his master, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. This man was a mighty warrior, but he had a skin disease. Now Aramean raiding parties had gone out and captured a young girl from the land of Israel. She served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "I wish that my master could come before the prophet who lives in Samaria. He would cure him of his skin disease." So Naaman went and told his master what the young girl from the land of Israel had said. Then Aram's king said, "Go ahead, I will send a letter to Israel's king." So Naaman left. He took along 10 kikos of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. He brought the letter to Israel's king. It read, "Along with this letter, I am sending you my servant Naaman so you can cure him of his skin disease." In other versions, it says leprosy. When the king of Israel read the letter, he ripped his clothes. He said, "What? Am I God to hand out death and life? But this king writes me, asking me to cure someone of his skin disease. You must realize that he wants to start a fight with me." When Elisha, the man of God, heard that Israel's king had ripped his clothes, he sent word to the king, "Why did you rip your clothes? Let the man come to me, then he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." Naaman arrived with his horses and chariots. He stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent out a messenger who said, "Go and wash 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored and become clean." But Naaman went away in anger. He said, "I thought for sure that he would come out, stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the bad spot, and cure the skin disease. Aren't the rivers in Damascus, the Abena and the Pharpar, better than all Israel's waters? Couldn't I wash in them and get clean?" So he turned away and proceeded to leave in anger. Naaman's servant came up to him and spoke to him. Our father, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, wouldn't you have done it? All he said to you was, wash and become clean. So Naaman went down and bathed in the Jordan 7 times, just as the man of God had said. His skin was restored like that of a young boy, and he became clean. He returned to the man of God with all his attendants. He came and stood before Elisha, saying, now I know for certain that there is no God anywhere on earth except in Israel. Please accept a gift from your servant. But Elisha said, I swear by the life of the Lord I serve that I won't accept anything. Aren't the rivers in Damascus, the Abena and the Pawpaw, better than all Israel's waters? Couldn't I wash in them and get clean? This statement shows that not only was the name Abena known in ancient biblical times, it was also known to be better than all Israel's water. From Damascus to present-day Ghana on the west coast of the African continent, Abena, which we can find in the so-called Strong's Hebrew number 71, was and still is known as a feminine river. Did the AKAN spend time in Damascus, as did the captive Israelite lady who instructed Naamah to consult the prophet in Israel for his skin condition? Is it a mere coincidence, or is the name Abena attributed by the AKAN to beautiful and mighty waters, a remnant of a collective memory that survived the tests of time over 2,800 years ago via oral history? But there is a more significant lesson to learn from the Naamah episode, and that is his recognition of the one who is greater than the prophet who sent him, greater than Abena, which he totally bypassed on this occasion, and greater than any powers that could well have been supporting the healing process in the Jordan River. Naamah understood praises was to be given to the God who unlocked his condition and authorized his healing to take place. Naamah understood right away that there is no God anywhere on earth except in Israel. As it is written in Psalm 82 in the BSB version, God presides in the divine assembly. He renders judgment among the gods. When the Most High Yah declared a curse on his people should they fall into idolatry with other gods, none of these other gods could stop his word from coming to pass. The AKAN fishermen along the coast have also observed throughout a phenomenon of nature that one is above Abena, and we will discover who this is from their perspective. Let's continue reading the story of Kobina Ayesu and that of his brother Densu, to see how the great fishermen of the nation understood this spiritual hierarchy through the ability to interpret unusual phenomenon and signs. Thus, the sea is essentially most of the deities combined, meaning Abena Mensa reigns supreme above each individual deity as mother of the gods. However, there may be exceptions because not every deity fuses entirely with the sea even after flowing into it, some choosing to remain unique after joining the ocean. One such deity is Kobina Ayesu, a river that empties itself into the sea at Simpa, Winneba in Ghana. According to some fishermen in Simpa, the Ayesu never mixes with the sea, so that one notices the river flowing through the ocean for miles, especially during floods. Some elders even maintain that when we go fishing, we are still able to taste it, the Ayesu River, as pure water, even at sea. The reason for this phenomenon may be explained by the fact that both Abena and Kobina Ayesu share the same essential attributes in that they both originate on a Tuesday. As a result, Kobina Ayesu can resist the propensity to join the collective, the ocean, and yet maintain his uniqueness as pure water.
And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid.
Now it happened, on a certain day, that he got into a boat with his disciples, and he said to them, Let us cross over to the other side of the lake. And they launched out. But as they sailed, he fell asleep. And a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water, and were in jeopardy. And they came to him and awoke him, saying, Master, Master, we are perishing. Then he arose, and rebuked the wind and the raging of the water. And they ceased, and there was a calm. But he said to them, Where is your faith? And they were afraid, and marveled, saying to one another, Who can this be? For he commands even the winds and water, and they obey him.
Whoever believes in me, as Scripture has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them. By this he meant the Spirit, whom those who believed in him were later to receive.
For there are three that bear witness in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit. And these three are one. And there are three that bear witness on earth, the Spirit, the water, and the blood. And these three agree as one.
This is he who came by water and blood, Jesus Christ. Not only by water, but by water and blood.
One of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water.
And his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace. And his voice is the sound of many waters.
I can see why the ancient AKAN people used the symbolism of pure water in a class of its own, unique, and which mysteriously does not blend into the sea like others do, to represent Yesu, the lion of the tribe of Judah. Judah, a son of Jacob, Jacobi or Jacoba, represented in the AKAN oral story as Tano, the father of many gods, and we know that ye are gods in reference to the sons of Jacoba, that is to say, Israel. Then to Ta-Kora, who in the Bible represents the fall of Jacob due to his proud and rebellious nature, but also the mercy and ability of Yah to elevate the generation of he who had fallen. Then to the ascension of Jacoba above all other people, represented by Kobina Ayesu, who reaches a status above all others within the parallel story of Jacob and Esau. The fear of Tano's arrival in the Hollywood segment at the beginning of this video, in the context of the AKAN's version of the story, is the fear of the coming together of the dry bones of Jacob, with his king at his head, that would bring in a new heaven and a new earth, the fear of the rise of Jacob's sons and daughters. At this moment, I would like to close with a prayer. Father God, I am not perfect, nor do I pretend to know it all. On my journey to know you through scriptures, I often find your footprints in my own cultural background on the African continent. Please guide us all through your truth and the knowledge of your will, and distance us from all forms of idolatry, which caused your protective hands to be removed and our downfall. When Yesu asked the disciples, who did the people say he was? Some said John the Baptist, others said Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. Today, some might say a river god, confined to a geographical location, while others would confine him to a single day of the week, as many of us do today with the Sabbath day. Yet, when Yesu asked the question directly to his disciples, who they thought he was, Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Yesu let him know that this was a revelation from his Father in heaven. Let your footprints in our oral traditions be a spark in us to remember the ancestral covenant to keep your commandments with love for one another, with a forgiving heart, charity, and justice, in order to present ourselves as a new bride to your Messiah for your glory. In these strange and uncertain times, I encourage you and me to keep the faith of Naamah, that there is no God anywhere on earth that can bring us the spiritual, mental, and physical healing except in Israel, in the God of Jacob. Stay blessed, you and your loved ones.
No, we say I'll be better past anybody. Miss wish around. And in your boy, oh. So I they hustle, no, they make just pass me by. So make you do your best, use your sense. I show the stress since I book a first challenge. No be race, no be test. Young guys for no one can test, yeah. So make it tell them. Say we they come, no they fear them. Baba got there for my side, so no shaking. On the enemy CCTV, they be an enemy. Even if I walk through the valley, you'll say, yeah.